Oh, goodness. Hi, everybody. I hope everyone is having a reasonably good weekend. Hopefully, the weather in most places is better than what we have here. It's been cold, it's been wet, heavy rain, very little sunshine. It's dreary, really dreary. I'm not fond of dreary weather. So it's a perfect day to stay in and paint. But before we get to the painting part, I do have some giveaways for today. We have some brush sets courtesy of Dynasty Brush. We have a black gold mini set, and we have a set of varnishing brushes from Water Lily, and we have a set of just a general set. I think it's a varnishing brush and a couple of angles and a liner. There's some nice sets in there from Dynasty and their new Water Lily line. I really like them. So we have 3 of those, plus there's some other goodies in there from Tombow and from, of course, from Renee and myself. So we have 3 of those to give away for today. So to get your name on the wheel, all you have to do is join us in the chat, say hello, like, share, do all of those things. We'll put your name on the wheel, and at the end of today's live, we will spin it, and 3 of you will take home, or we'll send you one of those prize packs. So we're going to have a little bit of fun. Today, we're going to be painting with mixed media. We're going to be playing with a little bit of fluid acrylic. In the pattern, I did give you the conversion colors for Americana. If you don't have the fluid acrylic, I give you the colors for the Americana. So the piece that we're working on today is called Vintage Poppies. I really like this. I like this technique. This one is based on an Alphonse Mucha style of painting. I think you'll really enjoy it. It creates a hard-edged look and it helps bring the flower forward. It's an interesting technique, and I think you'll really enjoy doing it. It's not difficult, but it is a lot of fun. And we're going to use layers of color, and we're going to create our own collage paper. So lots of fun techniques to do today. What's that?
Hold on 1 second. YouTube decided to put it as unlisted.
Okay.
So nobody from YouTube's watching right now.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Public. What a sin. A little bit of luck and good management. Here's our Facebook peoples. And we have YouTube peoples.
Don't know. There we go.
There we are. Hi, Brenda.
Sylvie Miller.
There we go. For some reason, we got all the Facebook people, but YouTube didn't connect. Hi there. Can't bring this up on YT. It's up there now. Good morning. Hi, Puddin. And Louise Long. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to reiterate for everybody on YouTube. We have 3 great giveaways today. We have sets of Dynasty brushes. We have Black Gold Mini. We have varnishing set in the Water Lily, and then we have a standard Water Lily set that I think you're really going to like. Of course, we always have some other goodies in there as well. Some goodies from Tombow, as well as both from Renee and myself. So we have 3 of those. To get your name on the wheel, all you have to do is join us in the chat, say hello, make a comment, ask a question. That's all you have to do. The names are collected off of the chat windows for both Facebook and YouTube, and then copy and paste it into our wheel. So you got to get your name up there so that we can get you on the wheel. And then at the end of the live, we'll spin the wheel 3 times, and 3 winners will get one of those prize packs for today. Norma Luther. Hi, Norma. I'm so happy to be here with you and love my positive... Oh, she likes my positive attitude. I have a positive attitude. Did you know that? No comment from the peanut gallery. I have a positive attitude, darn it. Yes, I do. I just, look for the good in life. You'll find it. Linda Giesbrick, good morning from sunny Winnipeg. Sunny.
Wow.
Wow. Some places sunny. We're not sunny. We're cold, wet, and gray. It's ew here today.
It's gross.
It's gross. Yep.
I gotta go get
Although the gardens are going to be awesome after this. So, with all this fresh rain. So Renee is off to
get dog food.
get dog food. Maze is eating inside a house and home. And we're going to be playing in mixed media today. I love this technique. One of the piece we're doing today is called Vintage Poppies. There is a mate to this one. It's called Vintage Tulip. I love this one. I did this one with my paid membership group. I really think it's a pretty technique. I love that kind of hard edge look about it. So today we're going to be working on poppies. And this one is one of my faves. Anytime that you can play with different media, it's a ton of fun. And I really like this technique, although I went a little overboard with the white, but we'll fix that. So we're going to be working on this. We're going to build it from the background out. And that means we're going to make our own collage paper, which is just awesome as far as I'm concerned. I love making my own backgrounds. This is just brown paper from shopping bags, from post office, like parcel wrapping paper, that type of thing. It doesn't have to be anything special. If you collect brown paper shopping bags for reuse and for other things, that's perfect. Works like a charm. The other thing you need is a selection of stamps. Now, you don't have to have exactly what I have. I just dug through my little stash until I found a bunch of things that I like. I have some with cancellation stamps. I know everybody's surprised by that. I have something with a lacy little scroll design. I have script, a couple of different ones, one heavy, one fine. This one has got a signature block on it and some texture in the background. And then, of course, my cancellation stamps, because I can't seem to do anything without those. The other thing that I love is bugs, insects, butterflies, dragonflies. So I like to have a selection of those. So given the season, it's going to be a cicada. I have a cute little ladybug. And I have a great big butterfly. I love these. These are the Tim Holtz, these ones here, Stampers Anonymous Tim Holtz collection. I love his stamps. I have a whole bunch of them. And so that's what I'm using in my piece. The stamp pad that I'm using is this one. It is a Stays-On stamp pad. I'm using Timber Brown, but you can use black. It's fine. So we're going to be using that. I also have a stamp with a little bit of texture. This one kind of looks like cracked paint. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to start with my cicada. And I'm going to rub my stamp. The thing to keep in mind is none of this has to be perfect. Absolutely none of it. In fact, it's so much more interesting if it's not. Ooh, I like that. And then same with the butterflies. You can use all of it or a portion of it. It's fine. And you're just going to apply the stamps randomly around the surface. It doesn't have to be perfect by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm a fan of this signature block stamp. There's something about that. In fact, I'm going to put a couple of them in. Ta-da! And then maybe some script. And again, I'm not overly concerned with it being perfect. I'm going to let it overlap in a few places. I'm going to tape my other script stamp. I like this one quite a lot. I just think it's a pretty script. Looks like old handwriting. And then got to have texture. And because this has got a flower on it, I kind of like the, you know, the pretty scrolly things. See, this one is a pretty stencil, or stamp, I should say. So I'm going to use that in a few places too, like that. And I need to come down here a bit, methinks. Now, my surface is only 8 by 8, but I cut about a 12-inch piece of paper because I want the ability to move the sheet of paper around. I don't want to just have everything fitting perfectly within the space, if you know what I mean. Ooh, I like that one. Quite a lot. And then there's the ladybug. Where did we put the ladybug? How about there? Ooh, I like that. And then I have to have my cancellation stamps. That's just a thing for me. I love cancellation stamps. I also like things when they're incomplete and imperfect. That just makes things more interesting, you know? So I'm going to use a little bit of this crackled texture down here. Like that. A little bit. I like it. Just like that. I'm going to use this other little cancellation here. I really like this one. There we go. So you can do as much or as little as you like. If you want it really busy, then go for it. I'm a fan. I kind of like the whole busy thing, but I don't want it perfect, if that makes any sense. And they don't all have to go in one direction. They can go in a variety. It does make things a little more interesting when they're not absolutely perfect. So once you have a selection of your stamps on there, I'll move that out of the way. You can also, if you like, take your stamp pad and add little smears here and there. Also gives it a little extra texture in the background, so that it doesn't have big open and gaping holes everywhere. So we want to make sure that this ink is well dry. So I'm going to dry this. There's Sandy Greco, hello. And Barb Schwabel, hello Barb. And Kathy Krasowski. And Mary Lynn McBay. Hi there. Watching my magic again today. Well, I think the magic will be if I get it done. Hello, Sheila. Oh, you're cool too? Yeah. And Louise Long. And what do you know? It's Robin Storm's birthday today. And Bonnie Clock, hi. And Janet Roach, hello, sweetie. So we've got pretty good looking paper, I think. I like having a bug. I like having, other little odds and sods in there. But the nice part is that you're not limited to using just what I've shown you here. You can use whatever you have on hand. I think that the more often you use things that are not necessarily relevant to the design that you're painting, it makes for a far more interesting background. So in this particular case, I was just looking for a few elements that kind of tie together. I love the script, the antique script, and the signature blocks. I love these old-fashioned cancellation stamps, and I love this sort of entomological type stamps. These are more realistic or hyper-realistic as opposed to, the cuter version. And it kind of works really well with all of these other elements. But as I said, you can choose things that appeal to you that are not necessarily pertinent to the design we're painting. So I just really kind of like this overall feel. And so I gravitate towards those types of stamps and those types of images. So we have a nice piece of paper. And as you can see, you can change the look of it simply by moving the paper around. Moving it around on that so that you're not limited to just having everything inside the confines of the paper. So if I tip it that way, but if I move it over, again, the paper changes. If I move it up, the paper changes. So the image changes. So it gives you an interesting way to sort of move things around until you're happy with how it looks. Now we're going to use this paper adhered to this wooden background. I'm using an 8x8 artist panel. The original is actually done on an 8x8 piece of MDF. And the reason I like these MDF panels is because then they're frameable. They frame very easily in basic frames. So I really like this look quite a bit. But if you want to work it on canvas, or if you prefer to put it on something a little more heavy duty, these art panels work perfectly. So we're going to adhere this to the surface using a little bit of matte medium. You can also use a decoupage medium. I like matte medium because I like that it dries matte, but we're going to use this. I base coated my surface with a little bit of, I just had, I think, it's oyster beige, a little bit of warm white. You can use gesso. It just needs a coat of paint or a coat of gesso just to give it a little bit of tooth. So I'm going to grab a nice big brush and we're going to put a nice even but generous coat of matte medium on this surface. Take it right to the edge. Neatness doesn't count for this. What does count is getting a fairly even distribution. It doesn't have to be perfect. I like generous so that we've got stuff on there. If you put it on too thin, it dries too quickly. So don't be afraid to, smack some on there. So I've got the matte medium on. The next step is to take that little spritzer. This is just water. And we're going to mist this paper so that it's nice and wet. So I mist both sides. Just lightly mist it. You don't want the paper dripping, but you do want it wet all the way through. And why, you ask, would I do this? Well, paper stretches when it gets wet. And then you end up with ripples and buckles and bubbles in your surface the minute you lay it into that wet medium. Whereas if you take the paper and moisten it beforehand, it doesn't do that. So I'm going to lay my paper onto my surface. Look at this. And with my fingers, just gently press it into place, like so. And then we're going to take a brayer or a paint bottle. So you can use either a paint bottle or a brayer for this. And essentially what you're going to do is just roll it over to remove any bubbles and ripples and any air that's trapped underneath the paper. And it also firmly seats the into that medium. Just like that. Now, when you're doing this, some of that medium is going to ooze around the outside. That's okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to flip this over. See, look, ick. We've got oozage. So I'm going to take a piece of paper towel and I'm just going to wipe off the excess. Just so that it's not running down the sides. Just a quick wipe. That's all it really takes, just to eliminate that. And now you can set this aside to dry under a fan or you can dry it with your craft gun, your heated tool. Hi, Liz. How are you, honey? So this actually does not take that long to dry, as you can see. And because we've seeded it well into that medium, it's going to dry nice and tight and smooth. And then once it's dry, we're going to remove the excess paper. Glad to hear it. Yeah, it does feel like November. It's cool. It's cool and wet. There we go. Almost done. And then I'm going to show you one of my favorite tricks. So the next step for this is to remove that excess paper. We're going to do that with one of these. This is like a nail file or a mini sander. I'm going to use the coarse side for this. So you're going to sand the edge down and away. Don't saw it back and forth, just down and away. If it's easier, you can pick it up and do it this way. Straight down and away from the surface. And it'll sand right through the paper. And it gives you a nice finished edge. Look at that. This is a great technique for doing ornaments at Christmas time because you end up with a nice finished edge and then you can put gold on them. I love this finish. It's such an easy way to give yourself an interesting background, but at the same time, if you have surfaces that are, say, not quite perfect or don't have a really great surface to start with, this is a great way to use those up because you're creating a new surface to paint on. There we go. This one is always such a nice finish. And as I said, gives you a good clean edge all the way around. And if there's any little bits of paper on the edges, you can just let it dry like this. Let it dry, and then you can just sand it away. Just a great way to give you that nice finished look. It looks very slick and very professional when you do them this way. Nothing like a clean edge, right? So it's still a little cool, but it's not completely wet. So we're going to take a little bit of matte medium and a little bit of water in the brush, just a little, and we're going to put a coat of the matte medium over everything. And make sure you get it down over those edges. Seal that paper in and on really well. Trick, make sure you get it nice and even. You don't want a super heavy application, and you don't want to see any bumps or ridges in it. So nice smooth application will give you that. Et voila. Very nice. So there we are. And again, oh, what have I got in there? There. So now we can dry that really well, and your surface is ready for whatever you're going to do to it. I love this look, this brown paper. It's just craft paper. You can get it anywhere. You can buy it by the roll at your local post office. You can get it at office supply stores. Just get the one that does not have the plastic backing on it. That's the only thing. Or no wax paper on it. So we have a really nice stamped background, homemade collage paper. You can do this ahead of time. And here's the tip too. If you don't have or can't locate some of this craft paper, then just use copy paper. You can make it any color you want by adding color later, but it will do the same thing. I've used copy paper for years to create my own collage paper. Parchment paper works really well too. There's a lot of things that you can do with just standard paper. And I think we're just about dry. There we go. So it really makes for quite a nice background. I mean, you'll go to dollar stores, you'll go to place of craft supply stores and scrapbook supply stores and try to find brown craft paper with a stencil design or a stamp design that you really like. And it's hard to find. And this has been a super inexpensive way to do this. Mary Galliotto, yes, absolutely. That brown paper that they use for packing is perfect. If it's too folded or too wrinkled for you, just iron it. Works every time. Yep. The stuff I'm using here is exactly that. It's the type of paper that you crumple up to stick into packaging. So, use it. So I went for my walk the other day with Dominique, and as we were walking, I felt something in the palm of my hand, and I looked down, and there was a little black fly in the palm of my hand, and the little bugger bit me. And now I have the itchiest hand. This is a lot of fun. I really like this one. Now, the only downside to this is that this edge doesn't look completely finished, and we want this to have an old-fashioned look, or at least I do. So I'm going to use a little bit of Vischwaltum. Surprise, surprise. I know, everybody's just gobsmacked. Little bit of Vischwaltum. I'll put a little puddle of that on my palette. And I'm going to use my 1/2-inch angled shader. No, actually I'm going to use a bigger one. I'm going to use a 3/4 angled shader. Charmaine, I can see sarcasm. Oh. So I'm going to use a nice big wide angled shader and some asphaltum. And I'm going to put a nice float along the outside edge. And I'm going to round out my corners because I always like my corners a little darker. Just a little. like that. So this edge does not have to be perfect. I like the wider, deeper corners. That little bit of asphaltum just does wonders for this. We're just getting a darker value at the outside edge. Not looking for perfection by any means, but we want the outer edge of this to take on a slightly darker look. Just a little. So I'm going to dry this really well, and then I'm going to put one more coat on just to give it a nice dark edge, because I like it. Hi, Cindy Jansen. So you can see it gives you a nice soft look. It's not really strong. So I like to go one more just to make it a little darker in places. I just like it that way. And I like to walk it out a little. So those corners aren't just harsh corners. I like rounded corners. Round it out. Walk it out a little bit. We're going to accentuate this a little later on too. But we're going to use something a little different for that. There. See, I love this look. Okay. Hi, Jill and Nina Pearson. Glad to have you with us. So I'm going to dry this really well, and then we'll be ready to start transferring on. But I want to show you something really fun. I like this subtle shadow. I know it's darker at the edge and just works its way in a little bit. And it leaves the center portion of this open. With the brown paper, I don't think that you need to put a ton of color over top of it. I think it does a lot of the work for you. So this is dry. And then this part I really love. I find this just accentuates things really nicely. I'm going to use my stamp pad. I'm using this one's called Timber Brown. It's very close to asphaltum, surprisingly. It's just quite a bit darker. So I'm going to rub the edges and the corners a little bit with my stamp pad. If I want a really wide look, I'll lay the stamp pad down further. If I want areas to come in like that, I just rub a little further and flatten it out. At a tighter angle, it gives you a narrow line. The more you lay it down, the darker you're going to get. And I really love this look. I like this sort of burnished, worn look because it comes in and it just adds something extra to the edges. Almost like an old burned effect, if you know what I mean. And so I like pulling some of these in a little. Just gives everything a nice aged appearance. Do it gently so that you don't get, big flat blobs. Debbie Easton, what's for dinner? She asks. Tonight we are having shepherd's pie. One of my guys, it's one of the family favorites. And then tomorrow night we're having lasagna. There we go. So all done and just with a stamp pad. Now you can do this with black. You don't have to use the timber brown. If you don't have it, you can always use black. Black works fine too. But I love this heavily distressed edge. I like the bits that come in. It almost gives it a burned appearance, almost. And it really does, I love the effect. And you can be as aggressive or easy with it as you like. So I'm going to dry this and then we're ready to transfer our line drawing on. And this is where things get a little more fun because you can decide how you want to place things. Now, of course, I have a big butterfly up here and a ladybug over there and a bug down here, but there's nothing to say that it has to go that way because, you know, we can turn it upside down. We can do whatever we want. So you can just decide which way you like it. And that's entirely up to you. I'm thinking I like it this way. I kind of like that. Maybe this way. No, I think this way. I like this for a couple of reasons. There's always elements that you can use more. If I turn it this way, a portion of the line drawing is going to cover up my cicada. I don't want to do that, but how much of it is it going to cover up? And in this particular case, it's going to be almost all of it. So I don't want to bury that. So I think I'm going to go with it this way, simply because I kind of like the way that these elements are going to overlap with each other. But in all honesty, it doesn't matter. I just want to see more of the cicada. I like the cicada. So to trace and transfer on this matte medium, it can be a little problematic, especially if it's not completely dry. I'm going to be using a black graphite, and I'm going to tape my line drawing into place to make sure that it does not move. That's quite frustrating when your line drawing moves when you're in the middle of something. And it moved already. Good gravy. Okay, line this up. Outside edge, outside edge. There we go. So I've got my line drawing in place. And I'm going to use a very dark graphite. And because you're working on paper, you may have to press a little firmer than you ordinarily would. And in this case, that's all right. I'm going to find my red pen. Oh, you're very welcome, Anastasia. So I'm going to trace my poppy with my red gel pen. You can trace in some of those detailed lines, but honestly, at this point, you don't really need to. Like all those little bits at the edges, you don't really have to worry about those. Not just yet, anyway. Because we're going to put them in at the end anyhow, so it doesn't matter. Now I'm using a red gel pen so that I can see where I've been, so that I don't miss anything, because that's an issue for me. be tracing something and then realize that, oh, I missed that, missed this, missed that. So I like the red gel pen because it lets me know where I've missed. There we go. And don't forget to trace the stems and the leaves. And as I said, you might want to press a little firmer than you normally do, simply because we're working on this freshly done papered background. Don't worry too much about all of the little details in this, because we're going to put them in towards the end anyway. So all you really need to worry about is that center vein, just so that you remember where it is. There we go. I chose this really pretty Melanie script is the name of the script that I used for the font. I used Melanie. I like this one. I've used it quite a bit. It's an elegant looking script, but it's also an easy one to read it. So you're not having to struggle with being able to make out the letters. It's a fairly easy one. I love the spacing of it. It's a little stretched out, but it's a nice light, it's not an obnoxious or overly elaborate script, but it is very pretty. Has a nice feminine appeal to it. And so it works very well with florals. So I tend to gravitate towards this font often for florals because of that. So if you're looking for it, it's called Melanie, and it is available at fontbundles.ca, or sorry, fontbundles.com. I love that site. It's a great place to buy fonts. And they usually have them in a variety of formats so that depending on what type of a computer you use or what type of files your software uses, it makes them very easy to work with. Okay, I'm going to have a quick look. What do you know? I think I got them all. I just missed the center vein on this one. Amazing. There we go. So we have our flowers transferred on. Our lettering is transferred on. As I said, a little slightly firmer pressure works every time. Just if you find it's not getting a good transfer, try drying the paper a little more. 9 times out of 10, that will do it. So we've got our lovely, I'm going to find my 3/8 angled shader. There it is. Now we're not done with the asphaltum yet. We're going to use a little asphaltum. We're going to float a little bit around our floral. I like to give this a little extra lift. So I'm just using a float of asphaltum. I'm moving it towards the right of the flowers to start. And same with around the leaves. Now this is going to be subtle in the end, but it does make a difference. It just gives these flowers a little lift off of that background. So into those open spaces. This is such a fun technique, doing this particular one. So I've got a little bit of that asphaltum. I'm going to put a little in there and up under our flower. Just gives our background a little more substance, a little depth back there in behind our flowers. And I'll put a little under the underside here, just like that. And we're also going to do a little bit on the lettering. So a little float to the right of each letter. Darkest value towards the letter. Inside those areas, to those curves. It's just enough to help lift that lettering off the surface. We're not looking for a really harsh shadow. We're just looking for a small amount of contrast. It's actually showing up quite dark on the camera, but it's not as dark as you think. Subtlety. There we are. So I'm going to dry this really well. And then we're going to break out one of my favorite toys. I'm going to use a Sharpie. What does the word mean, papaveri? It's Latin. It means poppy. So you can use a Sharpie, an IdentaPen. You just want something that's permanent so that water isn't going to bother it. And I found that either a Sharpie or an IdentaPen works perfectly. We're just going to gently outline all of the elements of this floral. It is going to make your life a little simpler in the end, I promise you. Of course, I pick up the one Sharpie that has just about had the biscuit. Da-da-da-da. So when you're outlining this, it does not have to be perfect, because when towards the end I'll show you why, because we're going to be doing more of this. This is just more for the ability to see this clearly through the next bit, so that elements don't get lost, because this part is going to be busy. It will make your life a little easier, I promise. Okay. So just a quick outline, general outline. Don't worry about any of the details just yet. Doo-doo-doo. Fast and dirty. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just the outline. I love this part. Super simple. And then we got one more down here. And we'll outline this one. Every once in a while, you just need something that comes together easily, but still gives you a little bit of satisfaction from a creative standpoint. It's not always the long and involved patterns. Hi, Linda. Linda Salsini. Good to see you here. And Teresa Claver. Donna Pauls. So I just outlined everything so that it could be clear on this. So we're going to be using a little bit of the fluid acrylic. And I've got a bunch of my favorites, actually. This one, green gold. Love this color. I'm going to put a little puddle of it on my... This bottle is almost empty. You can tell that it's my favorite because it's almost empty. So a little bit of green gold, and then primary magenta, or magenta. If you're painting using Americana colors, Tuscan red is beautiful for this. And we're also going to need some warm white. And this part is pretty straightforward. We need to build a little bit of a base for these colors. But we don't want to put so much paint on that it buries everything. We still want to see some of those design elements peeking through. So we're going to use thinned warm white. Heavily thinned warm white. Now you can start with a float of heavily thinned warm white in those areas of the petals that would be the darkest, the areas that are going to be the most opaque when we're finished. So all of those shaded areas down in the belly of the flower, like so, in here, because we want the color to be deeper and darker in those areas, because those are the shaded parts. And remember what I said, you don't have to worry. These lines are just there to guide you. You're going to put them all back in again, so don't panic if they're not perfect. They don't need to be. Don't panic if you cover them up. It's all right. It's just a guide for you, because otherwise this gets hard to see everything. So I like that little bit of dark line, just makes it easier to see everything. There we go. Just like that. So I've got a little bit of warm white, heavily thinned. We're just going to be, hi Janet. Just going to be a wash, a very light wash of color. Still too much. There we go. Okay. Super thin. We just want that brighter white in those areas where it's going to be the more opaque color. The rest is going to be super thin. Just a wash. And this is where those black lines matter. So neatness doesn't count for this. You're just putting a light wash of white in there. Going to do the same thing on this top poppy. So remember where it's the most opaque. And just let that color run out. So you can still see, when you look at this, you can still see some of those stamped images peeking through the flowers. There we go. A little bit down that stem. Do the same thing to your leaves. Just a wash, doesn't have to be much. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it's just enough to interrupt all of that brown. We want these colors to have some life. There we go. Just like that. So neatness doesn't really count. You can see that I've just got a little bit of heavily thinned white everywhere. I'm using a number 5 round for that. And now we're ready to start putting some color in here. And that little bit of white is just to make the colors pop a little bit. There we go. So I like starting with the flowers. I like that little, I don't know, immediate gratification, let's call it that. So I'm working with a 3/8 angled shader. And the color I'm using is magenta. Now, you can use any red you want, quite honestly, but I like the pinky tones in magenta. To me, this color has just got oodles of attitude. I just love this tone. So the darkest areas of the flower, so all of those, you know, that bottom part there, I love bringing that color in. Look at that. These areas here, such a pretty tone. And I like that we can walk this color up a little bit, you know? So if you like it pinky, you can use less of the magenta and just let the white that's already there do the work. If you want it more orangey, then use an orangier red. Use a scarlet in there. That would be pretty. So as I said, I'm walking this color up a little. Just like so. Love this darker value. So the darker value towards the center of that flower. And then walk it out a little. we go. So this is a really forgiving technique. Ooh, a yellow poppy would be so pretty. So then we're going to take that same color out towards the edge and just give the edge a nice crisp look. But look what happens to the petal. You get a sort of translucent area in the middle of the petal, which is what I'm looking for. I like that translucent appearance. And again, I'm not too overly worried by the edge of that petal. Look how pretty. And again, keep the darker value at the outside edge. Slightly smaller float for obvious reasons, but it gives the petal on the inside that little translucency. And that appeals a lot to me. I like that translucent look. And if I come down to the edge on this petal, do the same thing. Pretty, pretty. And coming out. I like that transition of color, that it's not a solid bar, that it just sort of transitions out of solid and becomes translucent. Just walk the color down to about the halfway mark so that you end up with this really pretty darker value at the base, and then the two colors merge, or the two values merge in the middle but remain transparent. There we go. I love Nelda Sanders. Thank you. What a sweet thing to say. So we're going to leave the flowers for a moment, let those dry, but I want to come down here and do these leaves. And we're going to start with that green gold. I love this color. And I'm going to float the edges of the leaves. Like that. We just want a nice translucent coat, just with the brighter green towards the outside edge. I'm not overly worried about the middle just yet. And we want this color kind of translucent. That little bit of white that we put down, that wash of white, just gives a very soft look to these colors. If we just put it straight over top of that brown, it would look a little lifeless. It would flatten it out. And we don't really want that. We want a little more vibrancy in these leaves. I love this color. Green gold is one of my faves. Just such a pretty tone. Easy peasy. I like the transparent look. I like that you still have all the shape, the depth and whatnot, but at the same time, you can still see all of the other things that you've done. You know, I like that transparency to show the other elements that are in this piece. So I'm going to switch over to my round, and we're going to use that to stroke in that green gold down the stem. Comme ça. That green gold is so pretty, and it's such a great color. I missed a spot on this leaf here. There we go. Love the vibrancy of it. So I'm going to dry this real quick. And then we're going to start adding some shadows. I really love the tone of this magenta. It has that sort of pinky, almost like a violet. So that's one of the reasons that I chose dioxazine purple to do the shading. Dioxazine is extremely dark. It's also extremely transparent, and it works beautifully with other reds. So I'm going to rinse the green out, and I'm going to pick up a little of that Diox purple. It's a strong color, so don't panic. And we're going to use that to shade the bottom of our flowers. Just there. And in those deeper areas here. Just a little. That Diox is very dark. And so we want to walk it up. I love that it stays transparent though. And we're going to use it inside our poppy as well, as close to that center as we can get. Here we go. And then around our floral, the little portion in the middle of the poppy. And then again at the bottom of each of these segments here. I love that it's so deep. Such a great tone. And don't forget in here. Now we have a few little folds in these petals. We're going to deepen that with a float of that Diox as well. Nice and deep. I love the transparency of this color. It's such a strong color, and yet it's so vibrant and beautifully transparent. So I'm going to grab a little Diox. We have a little fold right back here. There's a few little folds in this, but we don't want to overdo it because this will get quite dark very quickly. So I'm just going to put a few little floats in just a couple of select places and not too many. And like that. Don't forget this fold here. We have a nice one back here. There's a couple here. So I just don't want to overdo it. But I think that's enough. We've got the folds in that we need. Now, I'm going to dry this really well. We're going to do our leaves. Now, our leaves, we're going to shade with, I'm using sap green. You can use black green. You can use plantation pine, as long as it's a nice deep dark green. So I'm going to shade the center vein of my leaves. With a little bit of that. I love this color. Go. So got that first shadow in, and at the base of this flower, right where it joins the head, we're going to put a little float, and then I'm going to walk it down a little bit. We have another one underneath this overlap, and one above it, and one here, and then right here. And then we're going to dry that. This is all media fluid acrylic. Yes, it is an acrylic. I'm using green gold for those leaves. This is Decor Arts media acrylic. And my shading color is that sap green. If you're going to work in Americana, your base color for the leaves would be margarita, and your shaded color will be plantation pine. And to deepen, you put another float. Now, we want a nice deep shadow at the base of these leaves right here. So it's just a U-shaped float. I know I use that method all the time, but that U-shaped float at the base of the leaves helps create a little depth on your leaves. There we go. And it does make the leaves a little more interesting. So, nice dark green down at the base. Just like that. There we go. So I'm going to dry that really well, and then we're going to put one more float of green in. We're going to come up here and float this little shadow here on that flip over. And then we have another one here. I like nice deep shadows, so I'm going to just give them another little go here. There we go. So we've got some nice textures happening there. And I want to bring a little light in on these petals here. I'm going to use a little warm white and a little bit of that green gold. I just want to bring a lighter green in here. It's looking a little peaky. There we go. If your highlights are looking a little wanting, just take a little of that, a little warm white with some of your base color, and just, just put a little of that lighter value in. Sometimes that's all it takes, is just a little punch. It doesn't have to be fully opaque, but just enough to change the value. Oh, we are looking so good. Now we have a little center in there. And that's just that little center portion of the poppy where the seed pod would be. So I'm just going to stroke in a little green of that green gold. Doesn't need to be much, and we'll dry it. And we're going to give it a little bit of texture around it. I'm going to use a little bit of lamp black. You can use Mars black, lamp black, whatever black you have on hand. And we're going to use just a series of small dots around the center portion here. Let some of them come up onto that lighter value. Just a little. Like that. We're just creating a little bit of texture in there. It doesn't have to be much. Hi, Connie. So the fun part about this is that at any time you want to change something, you can. So if I wanted to brighten this or make it look more orange, I could bring in a different red. I could bring in almost anything, quite honestly. I can do whatever I want. That's the fun part. So one of the things that I like using a lot, I love my gel pens. I like my white gel pen. I did get a new one recently that I've fallen in love with. These are Japanese. It's a 0.35. It's even finer than my my Uniballs. But what I love is the black ink. It is a Sakura ink, just like my Uniball Signo. And man alive, is that color ever nice. It's very strong. It is a beautiful ink. And so this piece is going to get outlined everywhere with this black Sakura ink. And that includes all of the details on these poppies. So if you've got one of my Uniball Signos, that will work just fine. If you are working with an ultra fine Sharpie, that will work too. You don't have to have precisely what I'm working with. It helps, but it isn't necessary, if you know what I mean. So I'm using that gel pen, and this is where I'm also taking the opportunity to put in some of the minutia. So, those little dots and hash marks that deepen shadows. And I go down the side of my my flower down those stems. That black ink is very strong. It is a wonderful black ink for this type of thing. But what we're going to create is a heavier line around the outside. And when we get to a point where there's a sharp corner, you're going to round it out. And what I mean by that is this. Instead of having this stem here, instead of having it square off like that, I'm going to round it out just slightly, like so. And the same where it connects to the top of the flower, I'm going to round it out just a little bit. And that line is going to get a little heavier going down the other side. Wherever you get that harsh line joining another one, you're going to have that little rounded out section. I love a hard edge, depending on the style. Not all styles support it, but I love how it looks. And then I take my gel pen to create all of those little details in our piece. So if there's ruffles and ripples and folds and whatnot, this pen is going to give you that outline. It's also going to add your detail. So hash marks, little dip dots, things like that are going to give you all of those little details on the edges of your petals. And I like a heavier, slightly heavier line around the outside edge. It smooths things out. And gives it a nice look. So it's just slightly wider, just a little. It doesn't have to be a super heavy line, but just slightly. It just gives this sort of hard-edged frame, if you see what I mean. And it's going to be pretty cool, especially when we start highlighting it. The highlighted effect is really fun. Now, some of these lines can be short, some can be long. So our poppy is really good. We have these on the website. If you order the Uniball signal, this is what you're going to get. It's this Japanese one. And then we also have them in red too. So for the leaves, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to go all the way around the outside edge of this leaf. Again, the line is going to be a little thicker. But it's a fun look, and something I really love about this, I'm going to show you in a second. You're going to create all kinds of interesting textures on these leaves. And this is how you're going to do it. So instead of drawing in a vein line, typical vein line, I take it until there's a little fork in it. And then I round out that. And then I go with this. And then I put another little fork in it. Don't forget to round out that point. You can use dip dots or hash marks on the shaded part here. I'm partial to a mixture of both, personally. But I love that detail of those lines in the petals or in the leaves. And they're easy to do. You just put in a line back towards the center vein like so, and then draw a little short one to connect it. The next one doesn't have to have one, but every other one, or you can do all of them. That's entirely up to you. They don't all have to be perfect either. It just creates a really interesting texture on the leaves. And as I said, dip dots, hash marks, short lines, sketchy lines, they all work. And I like that irregular line at the outside edge. A little thicker, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Hash marks, dip dots to shade underneath the flower. Shadows are just dip dots. Simple, simple. Hash marks. So it makes for interesting leaves. Now, I'm a huge fan of Alphonse Muchin. He uses a similar technique to this in a lot of his work, where a lot of his pieces have a harder edge. And this is sort of a relaxed version of that. So using that black line to our advantage to create a little softness and a little fluidity. We're not looking for that hyper-realism, but almost a graphic arts type effect to this. That 1920s, 1930s Art Nouveau look to it. And Alphonse Mucha was one of the premier artists to really bring that more graphic look into fine art. He created beautiful works of art with this technique of using that hard-edged look. And this is a variation on that theme. It's pretty and it's simple. It doesn't have to be difficult or elaborate to be effective. So you can pick and choose. If you want it heavier, by all means make it heavier. I like it about 1/16 of an inch. I don't want it like a solid black line everywhere. I want to maintain sort of the delicacy of this, the flowers. They're soft and pretty. But at the same time, I kind of really like the hard-edged appearance, but not making them look hard. So a few lines to give the base a little texture. Dip dots. Gotta love dip dots. Dip dots are awesome. Oh, goodness. And then we will Now, when I did the tulip, I used the very same technique. So when you have a close look at the tulip, you can see it's got all of these fine little dip dots, fine lines up in some of these detailed areas. And in those shaded areas, we've got little hash marks and dip dots. Same with the thicker stem. We have that little cluster of dip dots that go down the back. And the same with the detail in the leaves. So don't be afraid to really play with that. You'll 9 times out of 10 get something you really like. Now I love sort of this curly Q thing at the end of the leaf, but I do that in all my leaves. Even when I do that fine little detail towards the end, the little scribbly line at the outside of my leaves, I like adding that little curly Q at the end of it. So there's that leaf. I love this look. And again, those lines back towards the center vein. Make some of them straight, or, with that little Y thing at the end of it. I just think it makes it look cool. Don't forget some of those little dip dots in the center. Makes things more interesting. So those lines don't have to be perfect either. I like that little rounded out bit, so things don't look smooth or even. Easy peasy. Alphonse Mucha, Denise. The artist Alphonse Mucha is one of my favorites. Not typically, he's a 20th century painter, but not typically what you would find in fine art books. He was a graphics designer. He did illustrations for magazines and ads. He was a remarkably talented individual. Look him up. A lot of his work still has major influence today. In fact, I have a huge book on Alphonse Mucha because he is, again, one of my favorites. So, this is Alphonse Mucha. His work is exquisite. It's beautiful. And this is that hard-edged element that I was talking about. And he used it liberally throughout his artwork. So you'll see a lot of it, especially in some of his larger pieces. So almost everything has an outline. Even the brown elements, they're not black. They're outlined with a heavier dark bit. But if you get a chance, look him up. He is an absolutely phenomenal artist. You'll love his work. And that's what inspired this one. Puppy has food?
Puppy has food.
Oh, good.
You have a bubble on meth.
Yeah, I do.
You got no friends.
Well, he had friends, millions of them a little while ago. Renee's talking about the screensaver on my computer. It's bubbles, and right now it's just a bubble bouncing all over the screen. There we go. So the fun part about this is you can continue on adding elements to this, bubbles to this, circles, little squares. I mean, you can have so much fun with this. There's just 100 ways you could elaborate on this very simple design, quite honestly. It doesn't have to be over the top to work. So if it's something that you really like doing, if you really like sort of the harder edged, if you like the scribbly lines, by all means, go to town. There's no real rules when it comes to mixed media. Half the fun is that you can break all the rules. There aren't really any, other than the fact that you're, using a variety of different media to achieve something. So there's no real rules to it. But I like to have a little bit of fun with it. So I'm about ready to start playing with one of my favorite things, and that's my white gel pen. Now in the tulip, obviously I was working on a lighter edge, so I could afford to play, I could afford to be very heavy-handed with the white. In this case, I kind of overdid it on the first one. But you're going to put a little white line or some details on the inside of that dark line, so just below it, like this. So you don't have to overdo it, but it's just to bring a little in. And just below that dark outline. So you can put in a little or a lot, it's up to you. I kind of overdid it the first time. I think I went a little too overboard with the white the first time around. But that's okay. Live and learn. Don't hit it out of the park every time, right? So I kind of like the just more squiggly, imperfect little bits here and there along the edge of the petals. How much you do is up to you. I'm kind of partial to the less is more thing after, doing the more is more thing on the other one. But I don't know. I think they both work, to be honest. I'm a little too, I think, solid on the first one. Too many connected lines. And I think breaking it up this time around might be a bit more beneficial, as they say. There we go. I have a fondness for this white pen. I also have a fondness for highlights, and you need to put some in here. A little bit. There we go. So you can also do the same thing to the stems. You can put in a little bit of white for highlights. Just use dots. You can put it wherever you want. I stayed away from the leaves because I think that the detail in the leaves kind of speaks for itself. But there are areas where you need a highlight. So I went with little, short lines or dip dots in places. As I said, I think I went a little overboard the first time. I just got a little carried away. Sue me. I just think this is a fun technique. You can have way too much fun with it. And then around the center of the flower, I'm also going to put a few little white dots just 'cause. There we go. So that leaves us with our lettering and then a few little finishing details. Look how pretty. Such a fun technique. And I love how it looks, that harder edge. It pops off of that background. And then that little bit of white. So, I'm going to dry this. And then we have a little stenciling to do, and we have lettering to do. And we even have a little more stamping to do. So I'm going to dry this really well. Otherwise, I'm notorious for smearing white paint. Don't want to do that. So pretty. I love the look of that. I just think it makes everything pop out. So, lettering. I'm working, as I said, we're working with a font called Melanie. I really love this one. It's very delicate, but yet it's easy to read. It's not a difficult font to read. So I'm using a little bit of thinned warm white. I'm using a very small rigger. This one is a 10-aught. You could use a 0. A 0 would work fine for this. So I've thinned out a little bit of warm white. And I've already done the shading, so we don't have to worry about that. And I'm just going to paint my lettering. This is a very fine font, so you can play a little bit, and it's a little more forgiving than you would expect for such a tiny lettering. It is quite forgiving. I've painted this with a rigger or a liner as well. It's not a difficult font. I just prefer my riggers when it comes to lettering. There we are. Now, the neat part about working with a rigger is that because it's built more like a flat than it is a round, it doesn't come to a point per se. It does come to a chisel edge. And so it's ideal when you press down on it. You can work it on its chisel edge or press it down to open it up for those bigger and wider areas, or use the chisel edge for the finer areas. So it makes doing lettering super simple. Here we are. There we go. Yes, Cheryl Green, this is called a rigger. It's essentially a long flat with very few hairs in it. It's a very squared off brush. It does not come to a point like a liner does. It actually comes to a very fine chisel edge. And so it makes it ideal for painting lettering. So you can't forget the dot over the I. Hi, Patsy. So I'm going to dry that really well. Oh, Patrick, I have a huge collection of art books. So we have our lettering done. I like to take that black pen, and just to the left of each letter, I'm going to put a thin black line. Essentially, right where we put the float. But if I do it with this pen, it gives it a nice, crisp, almost dimensional look. So it's just a thin, fine line to the right of each segment of the letter. Just like that. Oops. And that little thin line does wonders. It just gives the lettering a little extra dimension without being over the top. And that's one of the reasons I wanted the finer line in there instead of a dark float or a heavy line. Just to give the lettering a little more elevation. Just a little. There we go. There's our Papaveri. So, I love postage stamps. I think you guys know that by now. I have a thing for them. I just think they add something. And our friend Sandy, our dear friend Sandy, gave me a booklet of these. These are from Tim Holtz. There's a whole book of stickers of postage stamps, canceled postage stamps, in every color imaginable. So it made it easy to find a stamp that kind of went with the color scheme. And so I chose one. I'm really kind of partial to this nice big one here, right here. But honestly, any stamp will work. So then you have to decide where you want it. I chose here, but honestly, I think it would go down here nicely too. So I'm just going to press that in place. And then I really need another, like my cancellation stamp, because I can't just stick a stamp on there and call it good. I need to cancel it. That's what I need to do. And I love the idea of, multiple stamps, because there's one on it. So, what harm is there, quite honestly? So cancellation stamp, the other thing I like to do is I take my gel pen and just a little scribbly line like so down one side, and then do it again on the bottom where the two lines overlap, and that's it. I don't do any more than that. Just frames it up a little bit. I love this look. So we have a little bit of work to do with a stencil. Now, you could break out whatever stencil you want. It could be polka dots, it could be checks, it could be hearts and diamonds or whatever. You can choose whatever you want. I did choose the color according to the painting, as long as it came close or at least worked with it. It doesn't have to be a perfect match, but a complementary color would work too. So I have one of my favorite stencils. This is a Harlequin. This is 1/2 inch Harlequin. And we're going to work with a little bit of gold and a little bit of Bahama blue. Hi, Shelby. So I'm going to give myself a clean palette because I'm going to be stenciling. So a little bit of 24 karat gold. If I can get it out of the bottle, there we go. And a little bit of Bahama blue. Just a little. We don't need a ton of it on there. And I'm going to grab my stencil brush, we're going to pick up a little of that gold. And we're going to put a little stenciling in a few different places. Again, I take my stencil off the surface. I don't like to have things too perfect. And I don't want to make them all complete. I want them kind of distressed looking. Comme ça. Yeah, like that. I'm going to do a little bit over here. Comme ça. See, I like that sort of worn look. And I don't want it all over my stamp, so I'm going to do a little here and a little down here, just like that. And I think that's about all we need, just that little bit. We're not looking for, solid pattern everywhere. We just want a little bit. And perfection is boring, right, Debbie? So I'm picking up a little bit of that Bahama blue, and I'm going to reposition my stencil so that it lines up with my pattern. And I'm going to put a little stencil, a little bit of Bahama blue in a few places, not everywhere. Don't want it everywhere. I just want a little bit. I want to just sort of create a little bit of a patina on that gold. So just a little. You don't need a ton of it. And the same down on this one. Just a little bit. There we go. So we've got a little patina. I love a little bit of Bahama blue on metallic. I just find it creates a little patina that's a little more subtle. It doesn't come screaming out of there. I like it. And then I'm going to dry this real quick. There we go. And then we're going to age this just a little bit more. Love it. Look at that. So remember what we did to the edge with the stamp pad? We're going to come back in, because we've stenciled over a few spots. We're going to come back in and just age the edges just a little bit, one more time. Just using the edge of the stamp pad. And all this does is it unifies everything in this piece. So it doesn't look like it was a last minute thought. I love it. There we go. Now, to finish this out, all you really need is one or two light coats of Decor matte spray. Will seal this up really nicely. You don't have to do a ton of work for it. If you seal it with matte spray, you can, and then let it dry really well. Then you can come back in and varnish it with your favorite varnish. All of those other elements underneath are already adhered, and they're down there really good. So we've got the paper decoupaged on using matte medium. And then we used our acrylics. We used our fluid acrylics and our Americanas to age the paper a little bit, the stamp pad to age the paper a little bit. We used black and white gel pens to create the textures on the flowers. We did a little bit of brush lettering. We used a sticker to finish it off, and then a little bit of stenciling with a patina just to give it a little more interest in the background. And there you have it. We have this fun floral piece. I really like this technique quite a bit. When I've done it I did it with my group, and we did this one using the tulip. It's a really elegant look, and it's fun, and it's unique, and it's just so simple to do. Have some fun with it. Try it out. You can be amazed what you'll get out of this. Just the fact that you're using a little bit of paper that you already have on hand and a bunch of stamps that are hidden away in your stash, you can create some really interesting and beautiful backgrounds just with what you have on hand. So Renee is down here, and he's about ready to start loading up that wheel, if he hasn't done it already. And I'm going to switch the camera. Hi there. I hope you guys enjoyed doing this one. This one is a lot of fun. I love this combination of techniques. It works really, really well. So Renee's got that wheel loaded up. Maybe. He's still struggling to get that done. Iris, today's version is so much more to my taste than the picture. I agree. Iris, I'm the first one to admit when I overdo something, and I think I overdid the white on the original in the photograph. I really do like this one much better. Is that a text?
You hit price time?
It's price time. The stamp pad color that I used is called Timber Brown. And it's a solvent-based ink from Stays On. I really like this particular color. It's very close to asphaltum, that's why.
There we go. There's a bunch of names.
Oh, Deanna Swindlehurst. What is the name of my walking app? Oh, it's called Wee Wards.
Wee Wards.
Wee Wards. Yeah. Awesome. All right, so Renee has the wheel all loaded up, ready to spin. Can barely read any of the names on there. Holy Moses.
There's over 200.
Over 200. Good God. All right. You ready, Mustn't?
Apparently there's a 35% discount on trips to Punta Cana and Mexico.
Oh, is that the ad today? Spinning the wheel.
What a fun mixed media piece. Ooh. Who this? Who that?
Anne McGaw.
Yay.
Anne's one of my members. Awesome. Anne, I don't think has won anything in a long time. So just to recap, the prizes for today are some beautiful brush sets from Dynasty. We have a set of minis in black gold. There's the decorator set, which is from the Water Lily line, and the varnishing set from the Water Lily line. Some beautiful brushes. Plus, of course, we always put other fun things in there too, as well as some Tombow goodies. And he's going to take that one and spin her again. There's Miss Nancy K. Corinne Wiggins. And just a reminder, if your name pops up on the wheel, head over to my website at tracymoreau.net and click on the little speech bubble in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send us your shipping information so that we can get your goodies out to you as soon as possible. We are dealing with a work slowdown at Canada Post. They did not go out on strike, but they are on a work to rule. So things are going to be a little slow going out with Canada Post. Anything over 500 grams or anything over 1 pound and up is shipping through Purolator. So a little quicker. So keep your eyes peeled for parcels and whatnot. And we got one more.
Oh, what's that?
What's what?
Linda Dotier.
Where do you see that?
Facebook.
Oh, Dimmer just suddenly appeared and it gave me the desire to paint again. It's been almost so. Oh my goodness, pick up your brushes. Come and join us. We do this every week. And the last one goes to Sandy Burton. Awesome, Miss Sandy. So our winners this week were Ann McGaw, Corinne Wiggins, and Sandy Barton. And thank you so much for joining us this Saturday, as you always do. We love having you, and we love seeing you, and love painting with you guys. So come and join us again next Saturday. We've got another fun project planned for you. So we'll see you then. In the meantime, everybody stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you again soon. Mwah. Love ya. Stay safe.
And pet your dog.
And pet your dog.
Always pet your dog.
Yeah. Bye, guys.